But y'all looking pretty good. So I asked Stick to share with us tonight. His real name's David. If you call him David, that means you really don't know him that well. That's like if you call me Gary. If somebody calls us and I speak with Gary, I know that
we're in trouble.
A phone solicitor, or you don't know me. Kind of like Brian, we call him Biggin. Anybody calls looking for Brian, they don't know him as well as I do, because if you know him well, unless you're his mother-in-law, you call him Biggin. Right? Yeah. But now I asked Dick to speak, and I'm not going to take up any of his time, but I was thinking about this earlier. I was thinking I've got to witness him go from being single to being engaged, from being engaged to being married, from being married to having a child, from having a child to having two children. I got to see him get saved, and I got a real close look at him when he got baptized, because I was in that ice pit with him over there. I forgot to turn the heater on. But well, I've seen some things. I've seen some growth, and it blesses me. And so the clock's working.
You really can't see that clock from right here. That screen. I've always wondered when I'm sitting up there, how can y'all not see that? But it's covered by that screen. We'll fix that. That way Red can see it someday. Yeah, I'll handle that. But yeah, Red asked me, first he asked me to talk at the men's group, and I think he was, I thought he was joking at first, because he texted me, like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and said, "Hey, I forgot you're speaking." And I was like, I forgot I even got what I said. I was like, a little while later, I just said, "Are you serious?" He said, "What if I am serious?" I said, "Well, I guess I'll talk." And he said, "You'll be fine." And then if you heard the story after the 9 hour, I just replied back, "You idiot." And if that's what you tell him now when he says, "You'll be fine." But so I had made some notes then, and we kind of got down a rabbit hole that night and just started just a good conversation. I didn't say any of this stuff, so I got some of it and then some more, and I'm just going to kind of go through my life, basically. I ain't going to go through the whole thing, but I know Red has always said it several times, it's never been about dirt bikes. And that's, dirt bikes is what brought me here, but it was never about dirt bikes. And this is my first time really speaking in front of a group about this stuff, so y'all bear with me. But I started off, I got saved when I was, the first time, we all get saved when we're little. I was at Vacation Bible School at Hansville First Baptist Church, and I actually got baptized when I was about 12 at Center Hill. We grew up across the street from a church, but we really only went there, Christmas and Easter. I'd go there with my friends, and I'd go there on some Sundays and, go to children's church and then go home. We lived right across the street, so I would just walk over there and meet my buddies. But, that kind of grew up later on in life. It really wasn't a priority in my life. I believed that, Jesus was my Savior and that I believed I was going to heaven, but I didn't have that kind of relationship that, to fill that need. So I went to church on and off, 16, 17, 18, but, I was, we talk about never about dirt bikes, I was racing all the time. That's from 12 on, all I wanted to do was race and ride. Saturday, Sunday, we'd leave out on Friday afternoon, we was going to the track, and that kept me out of a lot of trouble. Because a lot of my friends, I didn't really go to any high school parties. I didn't have time for it. I wanted to be ready for the race. I didn't want to stay up late. I didn't want to go out drinking, partying. So I am thankful for that. That's what, me and my dad were talking about how much money we spent, but it kept me out of trouble. So he said, it was worth every penny of it. But so skip forward, when I'm, 16, 17, 18, and I'm racing, and, kids are watching you. And that's one thing I want to make sure, all the the teenagers in here of who all is watching you, and not just teenagers. I try to remember this every day. You know, who is watching you? I was at we were at a practice, and this kid came up to my dad, and he had noticed that I had on different boots, and he came up and said, "Hey, where's Stick's red boots at?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. I guess in the trailer I got a new pair." And the dad came up to my dad later and said, "Well," he said, "his 8-year-old wanted a pair of red boots because I had a pair of red boots." And I wasn't, even fast guy around the track. So, I mean, I wasn't no top dog or anything, but he just happened to see me and who I was and wanted a pair of red boots. And he was kind of upset that I got a different color pair of boots. And then one day we were at at Double X in Clanton, and I'm sitting with a group of A riders, and I think I was in B. I'm the slowest one of the group, and this dad comes up and said, "Hey, will you come out here and sign my son's helmet?" Well, obviously I'm thinking he's talking to John Boy or some of the other the fast guys, and he's like, "No, Stick, you." And I was like, "Why does he want me? Why does he want me to sign his helmet?" So I go sign this kid's helmet. Kids are watching you. I mean, whether you're the fastest guy or the slowest guy, or if you got the coolest looking bike, the little kids are paying attention to everything you do. And even the same as, I pay attention to my elders, and, what are they doing? How are they living? It always continues to grow. So I learned to play drums in middle school, high school. I never would have thought that, this was what I would be using it for. I played for like 3 years. And then like 4 years later, somebody told somebody that I knew how to play the drums. And then I started playing one night at a church and had no idea what I was doing. Didn't know what song we were playing, never even listened to Christian music. And, played for a little while and then kind of got out of it. And then started playing again here when Red found out I could play drums. And when I get to practice, I really enjoy it. I love playing music. But I'm just going to kind of just step through, so y'all just bear with me. So I met Red in 2008. We were starting, a mutual friend of ours was wanting to start a series. And I think I'm skipping over some stuff, but I'm going to hop back and forth. But so me, Red, and Tyler was there. We all went to eat, and we was going to start a dirt bike series. I hadn't met Haley at this time. I had met her and knew who she was, but we hadn't dated or anything at this point. All I knew is that she was Patrick's sister, and I saw her riding on a dirt bike on the back of it, and I thought that Patrick done stepped up in the world, but it was his sister. That's true story. When he rode by, I was like, "Dang, Patrick!" And that's when the hunt was on. It took a few years. But so we started a dirt bike series, and we was doing some buddy races. That's really all Red knew of me. When we got into this, I knew him and Tyler because I was racing against them on and off, a few times a year, and they would beat me every time I would go race against them. But we started off and we was doing races on Saturday, and we did buddy races for about 2 years, constant. And then we started wanting to get into more larger races, so individual races. So we started getting into that. So, Red teaming up with a 21-year-old at the time, I'm sure was probably not the easiest thing to do. He didn't really know me, and I was 21, 22 years old. I mean, I could have flaked out pretty easy, real quick. But I see, looking back now, God put, him, y'all in my life for a reason. Or, I wouldn't be here tonight, no telling where I'd be. Step back. I'm sorry. So I actually met Haley that next year. We were, this was before we had started doing the regular races. It was at a buddy race. I had went to Priceville the night before and raced, and she was there. We got to talking, catching up, just, pretty much chit-chatted, for a little while, and then we had a race the next day at Cornerstone. I went down there and we did a buddy race. Well, she told me that she was going to go back that next night, so as soon as I got done at Gardendale, I was like, I'm going to go back to Priceville. So I went up to Priceville, and sure enough, she was there, and pretty much sit there and talked pretty much the whole time, and then we left, and we went to Wendy's with her brother and Nate, and we was having practice the next day. On the way home, Patrick texts me and gives me her number. So they come to practice. Patrick and his brother come and ride the next day, and that's how it all started. So that was into 2009. Fast forward 7 months. In July of 2010, we got engaged. I sold a dirt bike and a street bike, and I think Tyler was at the house when the day I went and looked at a ring, and we were getting ready for the 24-hour race. I think that's when I told my dad. I think you were sitting in there, and I caught my dad off guard, and I said I went and looked at rings today, and so that 2010, July 14th, we got engaged, and then we got married in 2011. So, at that time, we really wasn't going to church. I remember she came and asked me one day. We was in our first house, and she asked if I was going to heaven. And I thought, I'm pretty sure I was, but I didn't have that real confirmation, So, we kept living our lives the way we were. Little bit known that this is why, dirt bikes got me into this. And in 2010, I was working part-time, going to college, didn't have a full-time job. A friend of mine that I race with calls me up out of the blue, says, "Hey, you like a job?" I was like, "Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm going to school part-time and I'm working part-time and I get to ride my dirt bike all the time. I mean, what could be better?" So he's like, "Well, there's an opportunity here, but you're going to have to, start now, if you want to get into this role." So I got to thinking about it, and I didn't have to go to work then. I was 21, so I just started dating Haley, and I knew at that time. So I went ahead and took that job, swapped my school schedule around. I started going to school at night. I was working first shift in the plant and going to class at night, and that was the opportunity that I had presented to me to start my life and my life with Haley. Where if I hadn't had a full-time job at that time, it might not be here. So for that person, he made a big impact in my life and still does. I still work with him. But so we go on and we're putting on races, and we're racing on Saturdays, which is a lot different than most of your local off-road races. They always race on Sunday. When Red said we were going to race on Saturday, I was kind of like, I don't know if that's going to work, because the whole time I've been racing, you race on Sunday, and you take the time to get your stuff ready on Saturday and drive up there. And motocross races, we'd race on Saturday or Sunday, just kind of depending on where we were at. But for years, so I really kind of wasn't exactly sure how that was going to work and how people would react to it. Well, as you can tell, it's exploded. When we first started, though, we had low turnouts, which we were fine with at first. We didn't want to get in over our heads. I thought everything went really well, but each year it continues to grow and grow and grow, and he's given the word at each race. I think we've had, I counted earlier this year how many races we've had is close to 90. I think maybe one race he hadn't gave some sort of devotion before the race, and people get saved every race, and so I always try to listen in on those, and I don't always have the opportunity to, because I'm running around trying to get make sure scoring's ready, getting stuff from sign up, and I'm running back and forth. I don't always get to stop and listen, but I definitely over the past years I make it a point to try to, if I don't get to listen, I try to listen to what Debbie posts, because she normally tries to put it on Facebook for me. But in 2013, we began talking about having kids. Actually found out we were pregnant at the end, towards the end of 2015 or 2013. And Haley was racing as well. So we were about halfway through the middle of a series whenever we found out. Well, we go for a couple doctor's visits, and they said, it's not growing, it's not doing what it's supposed to. So we're actually eating at Ruby Tuesdays in Gardendale one night, and Red swings by, stops, and he's talking to us. He's like, "Hey, when do we get to announce this thing?" And we're like, "Well, I don't know if we're gonna get to." But you go back a couple weeks later, and at that time, I really didn't know how to pray. What Daryl was talking last week, you don't know what to do. You just have thoughts. You don't really know what to do at that time if you don't have that relationship. Move on, and it's we had a miscarriage and kept on with that. So, but that night, after had a procedure done, she had to go to Atlanta, I think, somewhere for school, and I had to go down to Troy to a dirt bike race. So after all that day, pretty much got home. Hey, love you. I had to pack up the trailer, and we had to go our separate ways. So, it's definitely tough times when you have to go you have other stuff in life, gets in the way, and you have to, have that, something, to keep you strong, and that's kind of what I was missing in life. So, move on into later in that next spring. Haley actually ended up winning the championship that year. So she missed one race, I think. Well, started back at that spring. She won. And the very first race after that series was over was a buddy race at my parents' place. And we raced family class together. I think we got fourth. Well, she said she felt horrible after the race. She was sick as a dog. So she went home. I stayed, and we helped cleaned up. And that Monday, I go to work. I think I went golfing. Came home that night, and we went to go eat. She's like, "Hey, stop by CVS." And so we stopped by CVS, and I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "I'm going to get a pregnancy test." I'm like, "Okay." And sure enough, a little while later, got a yes, positive. And so that was, we had 9 months later we had Corbin. But through this time of being pregnant with Corbin, we found out that he was having a cleft lip and palate, and I had no idea what that was. She had known it from school, but she saw it on the ultrasound right away. So all I knew when they told me, they said, "Hey, y'all got to go to UAB and get some other tests done." I'm like, "Okay, we'll go get some tests done. I'll be good." So we go to UAB. They tell us, "Hey, he's got cleft lip, palate. Do you have any?" They start asking all these questions, and I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea what they're asking me." And luckily, for me, she knew the answers and kind of what to do and say and the questions I ask. And so I didn't even know what to expect. So, in December of 14, we go in the night before, and again this time this was about when Red started going preaching at Pelham, right? Because I remember we were driving down to Pelham on Sunday nights and getting home at like 10 o'clock. And at that time, honestly, Red was one of my good friends. I wanted to hear him preach, but I was going in support of him. And it wasn't because I was just itching for the word. I was going to go support my friend. But we drove down there every Sunday night, and I remember praying, and I think Miss Ellie was down there praying with us. It was after we found the news of Corbin. And everything that the doctor said, this scenario is best case scenario, as far as a child being born, with a disability, or with a I don't even know what you call it. something wrong. But so, Corbin is born, and that's the first time I get to see him. You're filled with emotions, and all I can think about is, he did not deserve this. Every dad, when you look at it, you're like, just let it be me instead. But so keep on going on with that. So he had to have a surgery about 3 months in. And they tell you all the worst stuff. They have to start checking his brain, heart, and everything. Hey, it could be this, because of cleft. This may not have formed. This may not have formed. Basically everything that could go wrong, they're just throwing it at you, and you're just like, just don't tell me. Just go check, and then I don't even have to know all this stuff. Anyway, so his first surgery was in March of 15, and so that's where they sewed his lip up. They pulled everything together. He comes out and his face is all swollen. It's blue from they're pulling his face together. Well, during all this time, I remember Red said, Miss Elliott, like Corbin was a focal point of the women's prayer group that was going on. And we had a race like 3 weeks after that, and you couldn't even tell Corbin had a surgery hardly. If you'd looked at him 2 or 3 weeks before, he looked like a completely different kid. And I was telling Red about it that morning. And he said, well, why don't you? And then he started telling me about, he's every day, Miss Ellie is praying for him. He's been a focal point in the prayer group. And again, my prayer consisted of, thankful for a family, thank you for my kids. I really didn't know how to pray. And that seems to be, it's a common theme when you start listening to other people, how they grow in their spirit of, learning how to pray. And when we were talking about our men's group, and you're like, what do you want to get out of this? That was one of my things. Like, I want to know more about the Word. I want to understand it more, the whys. So we were talking about today at work, people were explaining stuff to us in a finance meeting, but I'm like, I don't know what that means. I want to know why. Like, why is it like that? So it's important to know why on the reasons. So this is, Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds what is good, receiver of favor of the Lord. And, it's good to have a good wife, to go through this stuff with. Somebody that's supportive, somebody that knows what they're talking about. That was one of the toughest things I had to go through, those surgeries. His second surgery was in November of 15. That's where they sewed up the inner part of his mouth. And this time I'm kind of a little bit more far along in my, I'm praying more. All they did was tell us on this surgery is how much tougher it's going to be than the first one. When you go, this is going to be a horrible surgery. You're going to be there 3 days. It's 10 times worse than the first one. And he come out of that surgery, and it was like the surgeries were flip-flopped. He was within a couple hours sitting in the windowsill, wanting some milk. It was the opposite. I was like, this was the easy one. That was the hard one, the first one. But we had to stay there, 3 days before we could go home. And that surgery went great. We couldn't ask for anything better as far as, his face and everything. He was eating well, drinking well. Definitely a miracle in the technology that doctors have nowadays that we're very thankful for. And in March 16, so of all this times I've been racing with Red and listening from 09 to 16. In 2016, we were standing at Deloach's pasture, and I'm listening to the devotion he's saying, and he always tells us, raise your hand, make eye contact. I raised my hand, but I was so far in the back by the scoring tent that I don't think he didn't see me. So that next Sunday, I told him, I said, hey, I said, you see me yesterday? I said, what do you mean? I said, I raised my hand. I said, and kind of caught him off guard. So then he texted me later, and we talked about it a little bit. But so that day is when I said, hey, having kids will change you. And I always heard that growing up, having kids will change you. So that was my motivation for it. So, and when you have kids and you see I see why my parents raised me and took such good care of me, because they wanted me to raise my kids like that. They wanted me to be prepared to raise their grandkids. So it all trickles down. So Titus 2:7, and everything set them an example by doing what is good, and your teachings show integrity and seriousness. So we're carrying Corbin to church, and on Sundays, and in my heart I'm like, I haven't really committed myself. How am I gonna? I want him to grow up like that. How am I going to, by not setting a good example? So March 16, that's when it really started for me. Later on that year, I'd tore my ACL and MCL. I had surgery. Haley had to take care of me. Corbin tried to take care of me. So that was rough, and thankful to have a wife that will take care of you when you're hurt. Is that correct? Yeah, Red knows more than I do. But in September of 16, we were at a race, and a friend of ours passed away that day. Probably the worst day of my life. It was not a real scenario that was going on. And that led a lot of people to get saved at the next race and baptized. And then that next month, I was baptized with a friend of mine up here in October of 16. So then later that fall, we find out we're having another baby in November of 17. Right before leaving to go to a race, hey, you got something in the mail? I'm like, okay, I'm loading the trailer up. I'm about to leave. She's like, did you check the mail? I'm like, no. Like, I gotta drive to 3 hours. I gotta leave. So I go check the mail, and it's a positive test. I'm like, okay. I looked, completely caught me off guard. I was like, this for real? And so we're having baby number 2. So then off I gotta go to West Point, Tennessee, where there's no cell signal. You don't talk to anybody when you get up there. So I couldn't really even, the next day really talk to anybody about it. I think I told Red out in the woods. But at this time, I'm getting more grounded. So we're preparing. We move houses during this time, and this pregnancy went smooth. The birth I thought went smooth. It was easy for me, except for that couch. I thought it went real well. Yeah, okay. Because I didn't sleep much on that couch. Those couches are not made for tall people. But during this time when she was in labor, so this was the verse that I'm repeating in my head of, I know what we've gone through, in previous times, and that this pregnancy, this child is going to be, 100% perfect. He's going to come out healthy. And so Mark 11:23. I think I started off with 22 on here, but if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, and it will be done to them. And I just kept saying over and over, and hey, this child is healthy in your name. This child is healthy, and that kid is something else. Something else is being nice about it. But he is, he has not had a lick of thing wrong with him. He's just an absolute great kid, except he cries. Yeah. What? Yeah. He's the wild one. But that kind of gets to where I am now. There's a lot of other stuff. I made a lot of other notes here that I did want to go over while I was speaking that I've skipped over. That, through that time when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, and, I got asked to be like a mentor or advisor on like faith racers. And because one of my friends wanted me to, hey, come to do some of the camps, teach them how to ride, and just talk to the kids. I'm like, they don't want me. Like I'm not in that spot. Like I thought they need somebody better than me. But they wanted me to come. I turned it down. And I always had that mindset of when I'm ready, when I'm done whatever I'm doing and ready to live for the Lord, then I'll go to church. After I clean myself up, then I'll go to church. Not, I'm going to go to church, get cleaned up. And that's when I started going to church, just because I was friends with Red, I started coming to church. Just because I was friends with him. Now I want to go. Now I get up and, hey, boys, we're going to church. Used to, hey, I'm friends with Red, he's my best friend, I want to go support him, I want to be there for him. Now it's, I want to go help him out. I want to be there and listen. I want to listen to the Word, listen to the app. When I'm putting them on the app, I'll go back and listen to them again. So that was one of the things that you don't have to be. You're not ever going to be ready. That was one of the things I wish somebody would have told me when I was 16. You're not going to be ready like that. You got to come on, and then you'll be ready. And this is one that I think about a lot. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it, which is what I try to implement with my kids and what I teach them and how they act and how they see me act. I've learned a lot of patience since kids and dealing with people when I've tried to, change the way I present myself, where my kids see it or somebody sees it, that they think highly of it, not negatively when they walk away. So that one and one more. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. We're talking about speaking life into our children. And we tell them, hey, you're doing awesome, great job, no matter what, proud of you, that type of stuff. You're speaking life into them, speaking life into everybody, leaving them better than you came. So I try to, when I leave from a meeting or hanging out with someone or whatever, I'm like, did I come off like mean to them? Did I come off how are they leaving thinking of me, and are they any better? So there's a lot more to my story, but I'm sure I'll go over it at another time. But that's pretty much the summary of what I had down in my notes, and squeezing 33 years into about 30, 40 minutes. You want to finish it up?
Sure. Cut your mic off so we don't hear you breathing.
Can you hear me breathing?
Yeah, I'll finish this. One thing he said that need to get a hold of that jumped out at me, and oftentimes the way I hear things are different than others, but He just came to church just because we were friends. I just came to church because she was my wife. Or I came to hang out with my friends at the youth. But I came. And I know nobody in here has ever drank a beer or had any whiskey. But in the event that you did, I guarantee you, when you got that first beer and turned it up, you didn't go, man, that's good right there. Man, I need some more of that. So it tastes so good. Where you been my whole life? Nobody ever got a shot of whiskey and said, woo, baby, pour me a big old glass of that to go with my lasagna. You didn't. Why? Because it tastes terrible. It's disgusting. It tastes awful. But you keep drinking that beer. Next thing you know, you kind of start liking the way it tastes. Now you're looking forward to it a little bit every day when you get off work. And that one beer just turned into a six-pack, and next thing you know, maybe it's a half a case or whatever, but now you have developed an appetite, a taste for this beer. You like it. I like the way that whiskey and Coke taste. I like it. But you didn't used to, but now you do. Well, did it happen overnight? No. You kept drinking until you developed an appetite. You see how the same thing works coming to church? You don't just wake up one day and have an appetite for the things of God and think, man, I just can't wait to get up and get into the Word. I'm just ready to pray this morning. I got to be at work at 6. I usually get up at 5, but I'm going to get up at 4:30 this morning because I'm so excited. I'm going to pray. Nobody ever did that. But once you start getting into the Word, once you start doing the things like he's talking about, he said he came because he had a friend, but now he comes because he wants to. Hey, I want to go. And he wants his kids to want to go. Well, somewhere along the line, there's got to be the appetite. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's important to come. That's why it's important to bring your kids kicking and screaming. Don't matter. Bring them on anyway. Just like making them eat food they don't like. One day they'll like it. And they'll eat it on their own. One day they'll eat that Word on their own. Amen. I was texting with Kevin on Friday, and I'll tell you this story real quick, speaking of alcohol, and then we'll go home. But 5 years ago on 9/11, there's a man named Leslie Seals. And there's some Seal and there's some Seals. My family's Seal. And they say some of them didn't like being called Seal, so they added an S and now it's Seals. So we might be related, I don't know. But a good friend of mine, a mutual friend of a lot of people here, his name's Landon Carter. And Landon said, hey, my buddy Slick over there, you need to go talk to him. And I said, well, who's Slick? And he said, well, he's a truck driver and he's rough and he's just a rough man and he about beat a guy to death with a stick and barefooted, overall wearing. I'm talking about barefooted running around on rocks, kind of tough. You know what I mean? You ever met a barefooted pulpwooder? That's a tough son of a gun right there. You don't know nothing about no pulpwood, and if you don't, that made no sense to you. But if you know a little bit about it and you're a barefooted pulpwooder, don't mess with that guy. Anyway, this guy's like a barefooted pulpwooder is what I'm telling you. He's got his overalls on out there. He steps across most men just to get to a fight. And he's cutting his grass. So I walk up to this guy, and next thing you know, we're on his back porch. Long story short, this big old tough dude starts crying, and he gets saved on his back porch. Well, about a year later, I baptized him in the creek down there. And it might have been exactly a year. And he told me, he said, I made a deal with the Lord. He said, Lord, if I can get along with you, you get along with me for 1 year, I'm going to get baptized. So they got along for a year, and he got baptized. Well, anyway, 5 years was Friday. And I called old Slick, and I said, how's it feel to be 5 years old? And he said, what are you talking about, Brother Red? And I said, well, you're 5 years old today because you became a new creation 5 years ago. And he said, I ain't thought about it that way. He said, I'm only 5 years old in the eyes of God. And anyway, we talked a little while, and he told me this part of his story that I never knew. But he said, I was drinking a pint of vodka a day and some beer to chase it down with. He said, I was drinking more and more and more. He said, I couldn't wait to get out of that truck because I had that vodka or some type of liquor in his freezer. He said, on my back porch, he said, I couldn't wait to mix that drink. He said, I just drink all night long, every day. I was drinking more and more and more and more. I think he said he was up to a pint a day. And maybe it's more. And he said, I was drinking myself to death. And when he gave his life to the Lord, though, he quit drinking. And he hasn't drank any since. But my point to all that is, the man had an appetite for alcohol. And it started with a drink. And another drink, and another drink, and another drink, until he was just a full-blown alcoholic. Couldn't wait to get off work to get to drinking. But then he gave his life to Christ. He started going to church across the street from his house called Ebenezer Baptist Church. I've preached there before. Good folks. And now his appetite's changed. He's got appetite for the Word, and he teaches the youth, don't drink, don't do what I did. And he preached Sunday at the church. I listened to it. Pretty funny. And, it's good. But he's just he's just country's a piece of cornbread, you know what I mean? He makes me look like a city slicker. And they always tell me I'm a redneck, so if this guy makes me look like a city boy, then you know he's country. But I say all that to say this. If you just say, man, I don't feel like what y'all feel, or some other people feel like I don't feel that excitement, or like I'm not like excited to go to church, or like I'm not, raising my hands, or I don't feel like praying. Well, let me tell you, if you don't start it, you'll never feel like it, because you're going to have the appetite. Your body's been telling you, your flesh has been telling you what to do for the past 40 years. Now you telling it, hold up, I'm running this show, you're not. We're doing this. We're going to church. I don't care if you feel like it. We're going. We're going to get into the Word. Your appetite will develop. You'll like it. You'll want it. And you'll want some more of it. And I'm speaking from experience. And don't go by feelings. You dating? Oh, it's fun. It's new and it's exciting. Feels good. It feels good. Then you get married, and kids and bills, and it don't feel that good no more. So what you gonna do? Get divorced and run on down the road and find something else that feels good? No. Same thing that happens as a Christian. You better not be led by your feelings. Y'all follow me? I don't want to shut up. I'm starting to feel like preaching now, so I'm gonna be quiet. But did you hear what Stick said when he said he came? That's my buddy down there. I've had people that came in as atheists tell me, I don't believe a thing you said, but I came because you're my buddy. That's a true story. I don't believe that he don't believe a thing I said. I think that's just what he's saying. But anyway, during the course of these years, an appetite has developed in the man. And the exact same thing can happen to you. It will, if you just stay with it. You can stay with a diet, a good diet, and you'll see results. You can stay with a bad diet, and you'll see results. Y'all following me? Well, good. That cool air today, I used to think, oh man, it's about time for football season. It's about time for hunting season. This is some good riding weather. And you know what I thought about today when that cool weather hit? I tell you how things changed. I thought, man, this is some good weather for some taco soup and some chili. Woo, yeah. So Jackie cooked taco soup tonight. Roll Tide. My appetite's changed too. Forget all that other stuff. All right, well, it's been good. It's going to get better. We're leaving better than we came in. And another thing he said was, when you go hang out with somebody, if you at work with somebody, how are you leaving them? Somebody's watching you. Ain't no doubt somebody's watching you. Kyle used to have 218 on his motorcycle because this man over here had 218 on his motorcycle. That's a true story. He wanted to be 218 because Tyler was 218. You know why? Because he was watching him. And you might not feel like anybody's watching you. Somebody's watching you. Somebody's absolutely watching you. You hear people say kids are like